still exists. Today, my learned colleagues, George Negus, a mature age onset feminist and male sex symbol, and our young whiz kid, Jamila Rizvi, will dazzle you with the facts. These days, I find myself operating as a senior woman trying to close the mythical gap of gender inclusion in an organisation that's more blokey than a bloke whose nickname's Blokey, living in a bloke-only house in Blokesville, central Queensland. I'm talking about defence, where the gap is more the size of a Grand Canyon. So I urge you, sisters in the audience, start minding the gap in your own organisations. Bring women with you. Step up and say, get out of the way, or get out. And we will know success when there are as many incompetent women at the board table as incompetent men.
I got to the AIS in Canberra in 1995 when my life completely changed and I found out what I had was cerebral palsy. I also found out I was eligible for the Paralympic Games. Again, I wasn't excited because when I put that term Paralympian to it, I knew people would know that there was something wrong with me and I didn't like being different. Luckily though for me, I realised that this was the best gift that could have happened. Now, some 18 years later, I've been to 3 Paralympic Games, won 3 gold, 3 silver and a bronze. But the best reward out of all of that was actually learning to love my difference and have a disability. Let's focus on what we can control, our thoughts, and less on what we can't. This will put us in a better position for what we choose to do and for others in the future. Let's go for gold and not silver or bronze. Thank you.
Do you really have any idea how a bloke like me feels being a token male in our team, let alone our mate over here is in the same predicament? I grew up in a male-dominated Queensland in the 50s and 60s, when it was a great place to live, but you wouldn't want to think there. As you were growing up, you were told ad bloody nauseam, don't talk about politics, religion or sex. When you asked why, they invariably replied, because they make bad friends. Well, by the time I'd stumbled my way to pubescence, it struck me that politics, religion and sex were the only bloody things worth talking about. And I haven't stopped talking about them since. In fact, if you think about it, that's what I do for a living. But back then, in that sort of Queensland, it was damn near impossible to grow up other than as a dangerously naive virgin. I was so sexually clueless, to be honest, when I actually got around to losing my virginity, I had no bloody idea what I'd lost. So I had to go back several times to make quite sure it had gone. Boom, boom. When I pulled the male feminist trick, I was actually making a statement about how the biggest influences on my life and values were women, not men. If you're hoping for the next female Prime Minister of Australia, forget it. Julia was bullied into the job by a bunch of blokes and bullied it out of it by almost exactly the same bunch of blokes. So when you do get the keys to testosterone city girls and the power that comes with it, please don't do it. For the sake of the rest of us, please don't do it the same way the boys do.
More women in management positions and boards do a significant uptick just in the last few years. 22% of management positions are filled here in Australia by women, but how are we compared to the rest of the world? We're certainly ahead of America, behind New Zealand, but what country do you think has the #1 percentage rate of women in management? It's China at 51%. You want to look to the future? Go to China and see what they're doing there.
Already this morning, my colleague Carmel and my, albeit vaginally challenged colleague George, have given you both a male and a female perspective on why women must mind the gap. We rarely see a woman beyond the age of 45 reading the nightly news, and where we do, the gap between her actual age and her on-screen Botoxed appearance is vast. Just last week, we saw Sunrise's Melissa Doyle booted because at 43, she's no longer sexy enough for breakfast television, and yet David Koch continues to grace our screens. But the biggest, the greatest, the most significant of gaps that women are required to mind is the gap between men's abilities and men's belief in their own abilities. Men have been in charge of this world for the last 2,000 years at least. In that time, we've lived through world wars, the Spanish Inquisition, nuclear bombs, communism, the Crusades, the destruction of the ozone layer, steam mop infomercials, the growing popularity of Justin Bieber, and the invention of lime green milk. Surely women could do better if the reins were handed over. And in the meantime, it's a rather big gap to be minded. Thank you.
I want you to use this very sophisticated piece of technology, the clapper-meter, to decide this result. First, the affirmative team, that women in management need to mind the gap. How do you vote? And now the negative team. How do you vote? Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you the winning team. Women in management do need to mind the gap. The affirmative.